is your Classic Metal Show right here on theclassicmetalshow.com. That is brand new stuff from the band Metal Allegiance. The name of that tune, The Dying Song, that, of course, Philip Anselmo on vocals. And on guitar on that one, in fact, all over the guitars on that one, it's the mighty Alex Skolnick. Alex, how are you, man?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Excellent, dude. I'm more excellent now that I have this record, which, I'm going to be honest, surprisingly excellent.
Surprise!
and I got
to we've been wanting to share this. We've been living and breathing this record for a long time. So
sure. Well, and I got to tell you, Alex, the reason I say surprisingly is because, and you know this as well, there's a million of these records that come out where bands are sort of put together, whether it's by management or labels or what have you, and they don't seem to have what you guys seem to have, which is that writing element that actually created good stuff before you put the people to the music. Does that make sense?
Yes, and the internet jury that can be found in the comment section on every website, every hard rock metal website, they said the same thing. I mean, before they even heard it,
right?
Immediately, the jury was out. You know, these projects always suck. You know, these guys, there's not going to be any good songs. And then, we start releasing bits and pieces. And then, okay, well, the song's all right, but actually it's pretty good, but that's going to be it. There's going to be no other good. And then the next one comes out. Okay, so there's 2 good songs. Well, still, this project, so people have this preconceived idea about these projects, because you're exactly right. There have been so many of them that appear the way that this one appears, which is, this grand extravaganza with so many artists. But the truth is there's a core behind this. This was written as a small unit with myself, Dave Ellison, Mike Portnoy, and under the guidance and instigation of Mark Mengy, who got us together and just thought we should try writing an album and see what happens. And it really feels like a small band in which we invited a whole bunch of our closest friends to to play, to be a part of it, but only once the songs were written and we already had it mapped out. So it has that real band feel. Mm-hmm. I mean, it really is a real band. And we also didn't have the limitations of just working with one vocalist. We heard different types of voices all over, so we really got to be creative. And then we padded it with all these great singers and then guest guitarists.
Sure. Now I have to ask you, Alex, specifically because when you listen to a few of the songs, I don't want to say all of them, but a few of them really do sort of fit what the vocalists do anyway. Like Dying Song that we just played is very in the same vein as a lot of the down stuff that Philip does, and the song with Chuck Billy certainly sounds like it could have made the Next Testament album and it would have been fine.
I wonder why.
Yeah, exactly. But I guess what I'm wondering is, since you did write this stuff, beforehand, did you write with vocalists in mind, or did you find the vocalist to fit what you wrote?
I think it was more finding the vocalist to fit what we wrote.
Okay.
As we, I'll just say, when we started out, we weren't sure where things were going to go.
Mm-hmm.
It was really like a big experiment. Very quickly, we just found so much common ground and just so many good jams. The music started pouring out of us. And as that was happening, we would toss around certain ideas for vocals. I was never decided on while the song was being written. And then we thought, towards the end of composing each song, we might have a few different voices in mind as possibilities.
Sure.
But also, I think wherever these singers ended up, I mean, in the case of Chuck Billy, because these are riffs that I wrote,
right,
and he's singing on top of them, inevitably, it's going to sound like certain Testament stuff. I'm not the only writer for Testament. Eric is the one who founded the band.
Sure.
But there are certain songs, especially certain riffs like Into the Pit and stuff, the New Order, that that has my stamp on it. And if you put Chuck Billy on it, it's going to sound like Testament.
Right.
But in the case of Dying Song, I mean, just hypothetically, not that not that he would ever be available to do this, but hypothetically, if we put Ozzy Osbourne on that song, I'm talking about the song with Phil Anselmo.
Mm-hmm.
But because it's Phil, he's going to make it sound like Phil, and it works, and it brings out certain different elements of Phil. I mean, to me, the mellow part of that has that it's overlaps a little bit with his down period, but
sure.
Then when as the song builds and it gets heavy, I mean, you're hearing parts that are classic Phil,
right?
From the Pantera Phil, I think.
Sure.
And others who have heard it said the same thing.
Absolutely. Well,
but that was all organic. I mean, a lot of that stuff you just can't plan. You just have to let it happen, try to steer it in the right direction, and hope for the best.
Right. Now, did any of the songs, and not only with the vocalists, but with the many, many, many different guitarists and players that you had, did any of the songs start one way when the three of you wrote it, or the four of you wrote it, but end up somewhere completely different by the time it was done?
Not really, no.
Okay.
We recorded, in that sense, and the whole thing happened really fast. We knew we were under the gun.
Mm-hmm.
Not only once Nuclear Blast got behind it, who have been fantastic, by the way.
Sure.
Just sort of letting us do what we do, and working out a time to release it that worked for them. But more importantly, we were under the gun with schedules.
Mm-hmm.
There's a new Megadeth record that's going to come out, and we knew Dave. He's going to get sucked into that. Testament's new record will happen over sooner than later.
Okay.
And the Winery Dogs have a new album finished that's coming out later this year. So we all had we wanted to beat our record cycles.
Right.
That are impending record cycles for our bands, and in some cases tours. Testament just did a tour with Exodus, April and May. That there was a long tour across the U.S., and then we went to Europe and did more shows. I also did a bunch of festivals with Metallica and Faith No More. Great shows.
Right.
That we could, but that was coming up too. So I wanted to get all my parts done. But then, in some cases, in some ways that came in handy because when Testament and Exodus came through Long Island, New York, it was a perfect time for me and Gary to work together in the studio.
Right.
And do his parts.
Okay.
So, the schedules had a big part of it. And also, just to get back to your other question about how it sounded, was it different once the guests did their parts? I wouldn't say it was different, but it sort of fit the vision, but it was beyond our expectations.
Certainly.
It just, once everything was mapped out.
Okay.
We mapped out sections for guest guitar solos. I took all the parts I wanted.
Right.
I wrote this. I'm playing. I want a solo here, and I got to be the brat and sort of take the solos I wanted. But I also I wanted the guests to shine in certain areas, so I would map out parts, and most of the times we agreed, but we sometimes we would we would consult back and forth. But basically, it's the four of us all agreed on something. We all had to be happy in the end. We all had to sign off on decisions before they were made. Right. And then and the same thing with the vocal parts. They were mapped out. In some cases, they were demoed. I did a couple demos of myself singing along to the tracks.
Okay.
I have a decent voice. I would not hire myself as a metal lead singer.
Right.
A lot of the stuff I have to do an octave lower. My range is more Johnny Cash.
Okay.
But I could I could give a good idea of the song, and in a couple cases, vocal demos were sent out. Actually, Matt from Trivium sang his surprisingly close to how I demoed it, and that actually ended up working out really well. Whereas Christina from Lacuna Coil, that's a very different type of voice. That's up an octave, at least an octave from where I sing. And then Mike Portnoy did a demo that was sent to Doug Pinnick and Jamie Josta. Okay. With him doing the vocal parts. And actually, it musically sounded very good. It could have worked, but it was just a really good way, a very efficient way to capture these tracks.
Sure, definitely. Now, Alex, I just want to make a comparison that's not a comparison at all in style or what you're doing or business or anything, but just to see if you see this maybe as a future thought. I'm going to compare Metal Allegiance to Slash when Slash did his project with a lot of different vocalists. And then it turned into something where he obviously liked the song that he did with Miles Kennedy, which then led it into becoming a full-time band. Do you see, I don't think that any of you guys can quit your day job to do this at least yet, but do you see?
And I think I'll just point out that all our day jobs, I think, are in a good place.
Absolutely. Certainly people are more than anticipating both the Testament and the Megadeth record and the Winery Dogs record, which was, critically acclaimed. So
it's more of a they're more of a hard rock thing.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's also, it's relatable. It's relatable to metal.
Absolutely. But do
you... if you're going to listen to hard rock, I think the new Winery Dog record is much more relatable than some of the groups that they may play with on some of these festivals.
Right.
Like the Monsters of Rock cruise and stuff. It's much, it definitely has a punch. And so I guess what you're asking is, do I see it?
Do you see it becoming a project? Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it wouldn't. Again, it's one of those things. Just like when we did the album, we didn't plan too much.
Okay.
It was more of a matter of just seeing what happens, and that's a lot of. Unavoidably, you're gonna try things, and some things are gonna work, some things aren't gonna work. The way we did this, it seems to have worked really well, and it was just going with gut instinct. So we know how we feel about the songs. We think this is based on all our experience. Collectively, we have a lot of experience.
Sure.
Doing music professionally. We think it's good. We still have to put it out. It's going to take an audience to think it's good and to support it. But if we have the support and enthusiasm from the audience that's necessary to keep it going and to turn it into more of a regular project that's parallel with Flash, like you described, I think it's definitely a possibility.
Excellent.
But we'll have to see.
Sure. Let's veer away from this just for a second, because I want to talk about something else that you're doing right now quickly. Tell me a little bit about the Axes and Anchors cruise.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm very excited about the Axes and Anchors cruise. I think it's the first musical cruise that's really focused on the guitar.
Right.
And it's not just for guitarists. I think, there's a lot of rock bands on it. But the initial announcement was the three guys initially announced were Yngwie Malmsteen, Zach Wilde, and myself. It was a huge honor. And then since then, there have been some great acts brought on. There are going to be guitar workshops, and it's the first of its kind. So I think it's exciting. You have so many of these different types of cruises now.
Mm-hmm.
They're a lot of fun. I mean, I think one of the reasons you're seeing so many is because it's fun for everybody. You can bring somebody on one of these cruises that doesn't have to be a fan of the music.
Right.
But it's enjoyable. Whereas, if you bring somebody to a concert, let's say, just use a metal concert as an example, it's very loud and dark, and there's a mosh pit.
Right.
If you bring a spouse or even a parent or
right.
or a kid, it might not be the most appropriate, but you can bring anybody on one of these cruises. So
Sure.
They become these family-friendly affairs where, you can have the adult activity. So I think it's good that there is going to be one with the emphasis on the guitar.
Sure.
For guitar enthusiasts.
Absolutely, man. Well, Alex, for now, the main emphasis is Metal Allegiance. Where can people find out about Metal Allegiance? And, I know there's a release show coming up in September, so fill everybody in.
Yeah, there's a release show coming up in September. There is there are other concerts being worked on in different places, a bunch of international shows being worked on.
Great.
I think you'll definitely see us in Southern California around the NAMM show at some point.
Okay.
And we're planning to do more and more. People can follow us on Twitter at Metal Allegiance. They can follow us on Facebook, the Metal Allegiance Facebook page. They can go to the website, metalallegiance.com.
Excellent. Very cool, man. Well, I'll tell you what, Alex, as a tradition on the show, we always let the artist pick a closing track from the record and tell us a story about it. So what should we end this with, to give people a good taste?
Oh, boy. Well, let's see. My pick would be...
we're a 6-hour show, sir.
Okay, all right. The song Let Darkness Fall.
Okay.
With Troy from Mastodon.
All right.
Is it's a bit of a long track, but I think it's worth it, and it goes places that you might not expect it to go. And it was a real chance to not only do some, real driving verse chorus section with heavy guitars, but also really open up this middle section where I got to have fun with acoustic guitar with international influences, which is a big part of my sound.
Sure.
I actually did a whole record called Planetary Collision, which is my first acoustic album. I think some of that inspired this section. And Mike Portnoy added some percussion to it. And people who have heard it that aren't necessarily big metal fans actually related to Pink Floyd a little bit.
Sure.
In the metal, it has a little bit of that. But then, the main sections of the song are definitely heavy, and it's something. I wrote the riff as something that might work with Testament, but it's one of those things. Adding Troy definitely made it sound more Mastodon.
Right.
And it goes so many places and then comes back to that heavy core. So I'm really proud of this one. It's called Let Darkness Fall.
All right, well, let's check it out right now. It's brand new stuff from Metal Allegiance right here on your Classic Metal Show.